Hello, everyone. Welcome to Strategic Management here at TCU and week one. I'm your professor, Dr. Allison, and excited to have you in class. Thanks for taking the time to review this first video lecture, and I look forward to working with you throughout the semester. Strategic management is a very integral and important concept that all business majors and all business individuals should have in their acumen and also skill set when they enter the workforce. It is something that it takes time to experience and grow into, but the reason why you take this class as a senior, as a capstone course, is to take all of the fundamental business courses you've taken thus far, your major courses, and integrate that with both your own learning that you've had from the last several years in your degree, but also to incorporate learning from other majors, other individuals who have other interests. So, for example, if you're a marketing major, you're going to learn how to interact with an operations or a entrepreneurship or information technology individual, and vice versa. Strategic management is teaching you how to be a cross-functional leader in today's very cross-functional business environment, and that's what it's all about. It's also to help you become, as it says, strategic and be a manager who can provide really good decision-making skills based on critical thought and strategic planning. Before we can get into more deep dive in future weeks about strategic planning, how to build a strategic plan and execute that plan, we first must understand at its core key definitions around the word strategy. The first question is, and ask yourself this, what does it mean to be strategic? Today, what do you think the word for someone to be strategic or called strategic, or a company to be called strategic, what does that mean? And then number two, how would you define strategy? Now, what you may think of today to answer these questions probably and hopefully will change as you go throughout this class. It's very important to understand there's a delineation between strategic and strategy. Keep in mind, strategic is a characteristic trait. It is a skill set. Being strategic is also something that takes time to develop based on experiences, based on time, based on occasions and projects. It's not something that someone just has overnight. Now, you can be a strategic thinker, but to truly be someone that is strategic, you must have had experience dealing with different business situations, complex situations, big projects to work on. And over time, you are someone or a company who can be called strategic. Strategy is different. To be strategic is a olive branch from what the overall strategy means. Strategy is more about the actual act of executing a particular vision or idea. The word strategy in overall means encompasses a big vision idea, a big business goal, but incorporates all of the considerations, analysis, research, factors, game plan, all the things that develop a cohesive way of developing and executing an overall vision. It's not just a goal, it's not just the plan, and it's not just the considerations and factors for a plan. It's everything in between. One credible definition of strategy from Kenneth Andrews. Strategy is the pattern of decisions in a company that determines and reveals its objectives, purposes, or goals, produces the principal policies and plans for achieving those goals, and defines the range of business the company is to pursue, the kind of economic and human organization it is or intends to be, and the nature of the economic and non-economic contribution it intends to make its shareholders, employees, and communities. And that is a long-winded definition, but what it really is saying that it, like I talked about before, is that strategy is all about encompassing the entire portfolio of what it's going to take to see a goal come to fruition. You have to understand all the considerations and dynamics to get the job done. Throughout this class, we'll talk about all those considerations, dynamics, variables, the things you have to analyze, the things you have to put together to build a cohesive strategy. An idea is not a strategy. An idea is just that, an idea. It could be a great idea. It could be a big idea or a small idea. But the idea is not the strategy. An idea starts the strategic process. The goal or objectives or purpose are things you have to evaluate as well. No major goal or strategy is worth doing unless you evaluate it, and we will talk about that in more detail in this class. There are key words to keep in mind when it comes to strategy. It's a combination also of organizational culture characteristics. So obviously, every single company has a mission, and it's not just their mission statement. Now, a mission statement we will talk about in this course, and I know you've learned about what a mission statement is. A mission statement is something that you do consider when developing a strategy. You have to understand what your company is definitely targeting to do, or its overall mission in business or in the industry. So, for one thing, you can't develop a goal or strategic plan that goes against the overall mission of the company. You can do things to make your company, thrive and become competitive or win in business based on their mission statement. But the mission statement really is what the core element of what your company stands for. It's also their overall strategic goals or objectives. Every year, most companies evaluate their strategic goals for the year. So here, early 2020, we could consider potentially what are a company's 2020 strategic goals. They're usually very few. They're 2, 3, maybe 4 strategic goals that the entire company is going to work towards. And then from there, business departments, business units develop departmental goals that roll up into the overall mission of the company. But at the core of any strategy, you must understand the overall objective of the organization. When you develop the mission and the vision statement and the overall encompassing, set of goals you're going towards, then you build the intent. The intent is the strategic plan. It's how the organization will use internal and external resources to accomplish the goals or objectives. Now, the strategic plan has a lot to be considered in it, and we will spend future lectures and a whole project around building a strategic plan. But it's important to know that at a high level, strategy starts with the mission and the vision and the goal. Then from there, how are you going to achieve that goal or vision is really about the intent, how you're going to do it. Then actions, how the plan will be executed. It's the implementation of the strategic plan, and the outline of deliverables and outcomes are the key tactics that it's going to take to see this goal or mission come to fruition. So this slide is really going to talk about, at a high level, the 3 major steps of building strategy: defining your goal or your mission, developing the strategic plan or the intent about how you're going to get it done, or what needs to be done to get it done or considered, and then the actual actions, the implementation, the execution, right? We have the plan in motion. Now this is what we're going to do to execute it. These are the 3 high-level areas of what it means to build strategy, but in each of these 3 areas, there's a lot of analysis and considerations and business planning and management decision-making that needs to take place. And we're going to explore a lot of that with different theories, different business principles, and practices throughout the term. Do not confuse strategy with being the same thing as a plan. I bring this up very early on in the class because at times we can be confused that a plan is the same thing as a strategy. Look at the very last line there. A plan is a piece of the strategy. Remember the last slide we talked about a strategy encompasses everything from beginning to end, from the idea and goal setting to ensure it's a tangible goal, to building the actual plan, and then to the actual execution of that plan. A plan is just a very tactical piece of a strategy. A plan is usually a list of steps taken to accomplish a goal. It answers the questions of how, when, where, who, and what. It is an outline that provides the tactics necessary to complete in order to achieve the end goal. So remember, it's just the blueprint about how you're going to get it done. Think about it as building a house, where the strategy is the overall, this is why we have the house located on this piece of land. This is why we selected this outline for the house. We're going to have this building structure. We're going to have this many rooms. We're going to have this outline for the house. All of those factors could be considered the strategy, the vision for the house that you want to build. The plan is just a blueprint, right? The plan is this is the outline of the house that we're going to build. There's a lot of different things that have to take place to build that house, and that's what the strategy is. It's the bigger picture. That's why a strategy is bigger than a plan. Strategy tackles the question of why. The strategy aspect of anything you do in business is all about evaluating and validating the big idea. Why are we doing this? What is the ROI for this? What are the risks and considerations we need to develop to understand before we implement this strategic plan? What are the things that it's going to either cost us or not cost us? What are the trade-offs? And we'll talk about trade-offs too later in this class. It's a lot of more in-depth evaluating and decision making than just saying we're going to do this. A strategy has a large scope and looks at the end result as well as the many paths to the desired outcome. A strategy is also looking at options A, B, and C. You could have 2 or 3 different options to get the same end result, but you have to understand what makes sense to your business from a financial perspective or opportunity perspective for those different options. A strategy looks at every possible influencing factor, both seen and unforeseen, and comes to terms with the whole situation. It's not just one end result. So that's what strategy means. That's what it means to develop a strategy and the definition of it. But there's so much more we're going to go into depth about each of those areas, from ideation or becoming a visionary, and what it means to develop vision and goals for a company, and the things you have to consider when developing tangible goals. And then from there, once your goal is set, how do you develop a plan with all the factors and considerations? That's a whole other second element of the course we'll talk about. And how to build a plan that's cohesive and financially responsible and has the right market research to support a plan. And then we'll talk in more depth about execution of a strategy. When your plan is in place, do you have the right resources, individuals, technology to implement the plan? Before you get into the big game of the season, is your practice as all your practice and game planning, is it ready to be paid off once you get on the field to play the game? Because execution is all about playing the game. You want to make sure you're prepared to play it. So those are things we're going to analyze, and I'll do a lot of analogies so it can help understand from a business perspective what we're doing. But to develop strategy as a company or even as a manager, right, to be a strategic manager or employee, period, one thing I want you to be aware of in this class, it's not all about hitting the management level. You can do this in your first entry-level job when you get out of college. You can still be a strategic person, a strategic professional. So you have to understand what it means from a cognitive and psychological aspect, the key elements of strategic thinking, okay? Now, everybody has different skill sets when it comes to how they think critically or think strategically. And it also takes time to develop these skill sets with experience and time. In my career, it took me a while to really feel like I had a full scope of how to be a strategic thinker, but I still learn. Every time I'm faced with a new challenge that I never experienced before, I develop new skill sets in how I strategically think or critically think about a situation. So it's something that you learn and develop, but you can start, figuring out what skill sets do I have now to be a strategic thinker. The reason why it's important to understand what it means to be a strategic thinker is that's how you incorporate overall strategy with a company. If you get the right individuals in the right positions, then they can work together to develop strategies that are going to be successful for the corporation. So the key elements of being a strategic thinker, and there's several, but here's a few key ones. These are individuals that identify patterns or see a trend. They're the ones that can not just take data and insights, but they're the ones that can look at the macroeconomic environment, look at contextual clues about what's going on around them, and figure out a trend. They're up to speed of what's going on in the market. They're the ones who are really savvy on keeping up with articles and the news about what's taking place, not just in their company, but also seeing a trend with their competitors and the industry. They're the ones who can kind of have some predictive insight of what may happen based on current environment or even past environment situations. So those are the people who can kind of think 2 steps ahead. Think about strategy like chess, okay? You're always trying to think about what your opponent's going to do before they even do it, and that's what this is all about. These are individuals who also have effective decision-making. Now, the key word here is effective. Anybody can make a decision. Anybody can say yes, no, do this or do that. But these are the people who are strategic in that they consider they consider all the variables. They consider both sides of an argument. They consider all the factors, and then they make a very sound judgment type decision on what should be done, and it's effective. The key word about effective is they have a track record of success as well. They're able to continuously make decisions that benefit either themselves, their department, or their company overall. Now, don't get me wrong, the greatest strategic managers and leaders of the world have made a mistake here and there in their career. But being strategic also, and being someone who's called strategic or company, is more consistent than not that they do the right thing for their company, that they make the right calculated risks, they make the right strategic decisions, and that's what effective means as well. It's a strategic person or a company that makes effective, overall, consistent, good decisions. But they're also someone, like I said, who can understand risk, variables, and potential outcomes. They're not afraid of thinking outside the box, but they're also not afraid to admit that this potential plan could fail, and if it does fail, here's the negative outcomes because of it, and are not afraid also to say no to a strategic plan if they know it's not worth it in the end. There could be a great idea, but if the company can't afford to do it, or they afford risk losing something to gain something else on a trade-off, you have to make a decision, and not all strategies end up coming to fruition. You'll learn that too. A lot of strategies fail at the one because of poor planning, but another one too because it didn't even come to life because at some point in the process, a strategic person said this wasn't the right thing to do. And so you'll learn more about that throughout the class, but these are some key traits for you to keep in mind what it means to be strategic. So the whole goal is to have you start thinking, what does it mean to be strategic? How do you start thinking strategically? And as you do your assignments, but especially your projects in this class, you'll develop skill sets on how to be a strategic thinker. Some more about how to be a strategic thinker, especially in management or business in general. Again, don't think that you have to be a manager to be a strategic business professional. You can start as early as your first job out of college, or even now in your business degree. To be a strategic thinker and to be a successful business individual, it's trying to be more proactive than reactive. We always react to the business. It happens all the time. Your competitor does something happens in the market, and you have to react to make sure you're doing something sustainable for your business. But the more you can be proactive, right, to be 2 steps ahead of your competition, think ahead about what your customers may want from your product or service. Find ways to go to market faster with your product. Whatever you can do to be proactive is what it means to be strategic and thinking ahead, right? Strategic thinkers are also people who are not just stuck on one possible scenario. They're not stuck on the day-to-day doing the same thing. They're wanting to do things unique and innovative. Innovation's a big deal, but they're not people to do it also all the time. Sometimes they do it with a calculated risk, but they don't do it as a risk to the company. They do it in the right fashion. They do it based on their company culture. They do it based on company processes for approval, but they are ones to speak up and say, you know what, we need to try something differently to be sustainable for our business and to be profitable. There are 3 key elements that are outlined here when it comes to being a strategic thinker in management or in business in general. One is the critical thinking, right? We talked about that before, but you're someone who knows how to analyze the situation, who knows how to bring in the right variables, the right individuals, and the right information to make the right decision, okay? They know that they can't make a decision without the right information to support that. So again, they're making sure that they have the right information to analyze. But then they also synthesize. Synthesize means to make it very straightforward, taking all that information and bringing it down to very tangible things to review, because you can analyze a lot in a strategic problem. There's a lot of factors to look at, but these are individuals and professionals who know how to take the right information, the right tangible information to make a decision. The second pillar there in the middle is about perceiving. It is what is or what may be. These are individuals, again, who are more proactive. These are individuals who can look at both sides of the fence to understand both sides of a situation, and they're also able to look at possible outcomes. What it means by looking at possible outcomes is they can foresee a potentially, again, I always use the word potentially because nobody's got a crystal ball and necessarily a psychic. You're going to look at what potentially could happen if we do this, based on experience, based on competitive analysis, based on the fact that you've just got this gut instinct. Now, at times it's okay to go with gut instinct, but not all the time. We'll talk about that later in this class. Then focusing, right? These people can not just think critically and perceive outcomes. They focus on what is doable right here and now, and then in the long term for their company. They look at the overall operation of their organization. They look at, all right, this is it. This is what we want to do. Here's what we need to do to get it to make it happen. Here are the resources that we have today. Here's the systems and the people in place to get it done. And then I'm going to ask for the additional resources if I can to get it done. Maybe I need to hire more people. Maybe I need to invest into new technology. Maybe I need to streamline a process. Whatever that is, they're able to focus in on the things, the tools to get it done. So why even be a strategic thinker? Why is it important to have this skill set of strategic thinking? Well, it can help both the company and yourself as a professional. And so it benefits both the professional and their company. One is the ability to demonstrate that you have that big picture perspective, right? To be a leader in business, if you really want to grow in your career, you have to have someone who can think outside the box, they say, but also think the big picture, the long term, right? Short-term gains are only that short term. You have to be able to develop sustainable ideas that are going to be long lasting. And that's one thing about strategy that you'll learn, and I'll repeat over and over, is that a strategy is a long-term goal. It is a long-term benefit to your company. You don't want to work, you don't want to work tirelessly on something just to have a short-term win in the business. Now, there's times you have to be competitive, but that's also that reactive mindset. If you're proactive and build strategic plans that benefit your company for a long period of time, the longer you're going to benefit from that, from a profitability perspective, employee morale perspective, customer retention perspective, all the great benefits and KPIs. Another important factor is that if you're a strategic thinker, you have the ability to uncover opportunity and articulate the goals and objectives obtained toward that opportunity. These are individuals that can look for those new opportunities that are going to make the company very competitive, maybe a new revenue stream, maybe a new way to gain new customers. They're aware of what's going on in the market, and they're the ones who can definitely think of what makes sense for your company in the right time, in the right place. They have the ability to showcase comprehension of why the objective or goal exists. So they don't just say we need to make $10 million in a month. That's a great goal for the company, sure. Or we want to be $1 billion company in 5 years. That sounds great on paper, but what does that mean? Why do we want that? What is it that we can do to get there? These are the people who can articulate the whys and the hows and the whats. They're not just putting out a great idea. They're not just people who go walk around with big ideas. They're actually able to support it with facts and good insights. And again, they're staying aware of the potential risks, outcome, and associated variables. They're very much involved with the competition. They're very much involved with what the roadblocks may be and the challenges, and they're able to be the ones to help, work through them. So this is a chart that shows comparatively strategic thinkers and non-strategic thinkers. I'm not going to go over these in detail. There's a moment here you can pause this video, and I do encourage you to do that, to kind of read through it and ask yourself, what are some of the characteristic traits that you have? Now, I have gone through this with certain classes, and there are some skill sets like being satisfied. Well, it doesn't mean that you're not a strategic thinker if you're satisfied with some of the results that you've been given. What this means by satisfied is that you're never one to go outside and do something new and innovative, okay? You're one that's just, you're fine with the status quo. And if you're always fine with the status quo, you're not necessarily being strategic because you're just kind of doing the same old, same old. But you can be satisfied in a strategic thinker that what you did that was innovative, paid off, you hit your result, and that's what it means. So pause here and then come back in just a moment after you review these and see, what do you agree with? Where are you at today in your strategic thinking process? And what skill sets do you find interesting? So we talked about what the core elements are of developing strategy, and we'll dive into a lot more of that throughout the class. One thing to keep in mind, though, to be a strategist or strategic thinker is there are things that can come in play that interfere necessarily with being able to, develop a strategic plan or considerations you need to make when it comes to developing an overall strategy for a company. And these are things around company values, opportunities, and capabilities. One quote is, "The strategist's challenge is to balance these three factors and identify the space where they converge. It's at the intersection of these three factors that valuable competitive positions that create and sustain value for stakeholders emerge." Think about it. Some companies have certain values or certain, a mindset of their company culture they believe in. But just because they believe in it doesn't mean they're currently capable of achieving it, or are they capable of achieving certain goals that they currently have in their business. And then there's all these opportunities out there, outliers out there, right? There's always something a company can be working on, new and innovative, right? Some companies embrace innovation, some companies embrace new strategic goals, but it's hard because of their capabilities, their restraints. They may not have the right amount of staff or the right staff, right? The right talent to do something. Think about a company right now that really needs to get into digital marketing, but they have no digital marketing expertise in their company or tools or technology to implement that. But there's an opportunity out there, right? So the whole goal of having a strategic mindset within a company and enough strategic people is to bring all these things together to, to make some strategies, not all, because not all strategies can happen overnight, but develop the right mix of these three things and to pull it together so you can ultimately execute some type of strategy. Like the value, the mission, the value, scope, and culture of the company. Like I said before, you still have to, no matter what you're doing, you still have to make sure your company reputation, your company brand, your company culture is still intact with whatever you do. It doesn't mean you can't augment. It doesn't mean you can't, kind of leverage the core of your mission to do something new and innovative, but you can't completely go against that. For example, you can't be Nike or Adidas and do something that's outside of fitness or outside of pro athlete kind of lifestyle, right? You can develop maybe a new athleisure brand or athleisure component of that that still talks about fitness, but it doesn't go against the core value of Nike or Adidas to do something for the fitness of society, things of that nature. Your opportunities. So your opportunities are very wide in scope. It just depends on your business, what currently your objectives are. You look at things though, such as market demand. Is this a new business, or what are the new businesses surrounding you that are competitors? What is the value proposition of a strategy? Ultimately, what kind of value does it provide? And we'll talk more about that in this class. What are your competitive forces? We have a whole lecture based on how to analyze competition and how competitors can drive new strategy for your company or refine your strategy. Technology and other areas that can impact the business. What are the things that can impact your business day in and day out? And these are things you have to consider. There are these forces against your business you have to keep in mind to be strategic over time. And it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to keep on top of everything going on in business, from market dynamics, political dynamics, cultural dynamics, even in your own workplace, keeping your own team motivated, keeping your own team on the same page, and having departments and even executives on the same vision. It's a challenge even internally. So there's opportunities both internally and externally. And we'll talk more about that in this class as well. And then your capabilities, right? Kind of like a SWOT analysis. We'll do one in this class for your projects, with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You can only develop a new strategy if you have some of that figured out. You have to know who your key players are, your key opportunities, to even be able to execute, right? Do you have the right talent? Do you have the right competitive advantage today? Or what do you need to develop? There's sometimes strategies or goals have to be put on hold until you have the right mechanisms in place to execute. And we'll talk about that as well. Strategic analysis. So again, this whole lecture is a high-level introduction to the course, and we're going to dive into a lot of these areas in more depth as you get more comfortable with the material and as we progress in the course. But strategic analysis, this is somewhere down the road where you're going to develop an approach to develop your strategic plan. And before you can actually develop the plan, you'll have to do some research and analysis, okay? And it's an integrative process. What that means to develop a strategy is that it's not going to happen with just one kind of sit down, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. It's going to be, we're going to develop a roadmap. We're going to develop a list of goals along the way to hit that overarching strategic goal. Call them milestones. Go back to the football analogy. We want to hit that 100 yards. But here's what we're going to do: yard 20, yard 30, yard 40. Here are the play-by-plays we're going to do to get there, and that's what it's all about. It's also integrating your cross-functional partners. So that's why this class is a capstone class, because strategy in any business is very cross-functional. Now, it doesn't always mean marketing is going to work with IT on every strategic plan in the company, but the hierarchy, kind of bigger strategic plans of a company is going to involve just about every department in the organization. because most strategic goals are big in nature, need to benefit the entire organization, and at some point, each entity within the company will need to be involved, either from a key stakeholder decision-making process perspective, just to be involved for awareness and how it impacts their organizational unit, or honestly, you'll need that partnership to get the job done. Strategic analysis also challenges managers face are not generally isolated. They are complex with cross-disciplinary implications. Excuse me. So what it's saying is that challenges that managers face today isn't just isolated to one kind of very central problem. It's complex. A problem can involve many different things and actually mean different things to different people. And we'll talk about that as well. But most of our issues in business, our higher level issues, our more kind of important issues are very complex. So developing an analysis, a strategic analysis and plan, it makes sure it gets involved those key stakeholders. Okay, and make sure you involve those key cross-functional partners. And part of this class is understanding what does that mean? Who do I need to pull in and when in a strategic plan to develop the right execution of that plan as well. And that is the end of this lecture for this week. Again, tonight was just an introduction into the class. We're going to dive into a lot more of these things that I touched on tonight in more detail throughout the term. But I wanted to make sure at a fundamental you understood the definitions of strategy, overall at a high level what strategy is, and what it means to be a strategic thinker. Now for the next class, now this is saying the 27th, but for the Wednesday night class, it's for the 29th of November. We're not meeting in week 2 because Monday is Martin Luther King Day and there's no class for the Monday session. So I'm also canceling class for the Wednesday session. So please make sure you join me the third week of class. So on Monday the 27th for the Monday section and meet me on the 29th for you Wednesday night students. Please make sure you read by that class, What is Strategy? By Michael Porter in your Harvard Business Review textbook. It'll touch on more what I talked about tonight, but in more detail, and we will talk through some of that in the next class. And actually, you also have your first assignment due by 5 p.m. Email it to me by 5 p.m. of your next class date. So Monday night class by the 27th by 5 p.m. and Wednesday night class by the 29th by 5 p.m. Email me your paper. Review the syllabus on the exact parameters about how many pages and format of the paper. Your syllabus will guide you there. And these are the 4 questions that are posed for you to write about. Make sure you read the article and make sure that you provide more of your original thoughts than verbatim article citations. I asked for citations, but again, I'm looking for what you think from the article than the article itself. That's all I've got for you guys. Thanks so much. If you have any questions about the material or the upcoming reflection paper, one that's due, email me at any time. Have a great week.